Yes, guys, Enzo Fernández is staying at Chelsea this summer.
I feel like there's semantics at play here because Man City don't really acknowledge a deadline.
I worry about his attitude in the footballing sense and also from a moral sense, and that's mine.
Manchester City were staring at a transfer that could have shaken the Premier League, but when the moment came to put £120 million on the table for Enzo Fernández, they walked away. Even more surprising, plenty of City fans seemed relieved that the deal never crossed the line. It wasn't because they believed Enzo couldn't deliver. The Chelsea midfielder had 10 Premier League goals and 4 assists last season, and there were reasons the move looked tempting on paper. But £120 million is serious money, even for City, and fans were questioning whether this was the kind of deal the club really needed. That's where things got messy. The debate wasn't only about Enzo's ability. Rodri's situation added another layer. Fernandez had already faced controversy away from the pitch, and there was a bigger football question hanging over everything. Does Manchester City actually need another midfielder with his profile? Then, 5 p.m. arrived, and nothing happened. No agreement, no monster transfer, no last-minute twist.
This is the most ridiculous ultimatum I've ever heard in my life.
City had an opportunity to chase one of the biggest deals around, yet they chose not to pull the trigger. And with some supporters reportedly saying, absolutely not, the £120 million price tag was only part of the story. But the price tag was only one headache. The bigger concern was everything that might come with Enzo Fernández, and whether Maresca would really want to bring that kind of situation into Manchester City's dressing room. As this story unfolds, it becomes clearer why some City fans are pushing back, and why walking away from such a massive transfer might have been the smarter move. Then came the pressure from Chelsea. Reports claimed Manchester City were handed a firm cutoff. Friday, August 14th at 5 p.m. UK time. Suddenly, there was no time to play games.
Chelsea, after Friday, after yesterday, are more than happy to keep Enzo and to continue with him, unless the right proposal changes, because £120 million with the conditions made since May are no longer available as an option for him.
If City were truly serious about Fernandez, Chelsea's message appeared simple. Put a written £120 million offer on the table before the deadline, or the deal was dead. No endless back and forth, no dragging negotiations out, and no sneaking in with a last-second move. That huge £120 million number reportedly had history behind it too.
Good system with good players around him. Enzo Fernández is a really good player. He's aggressive, he's tenacious, he has a lot of ability, he's a very good passer, he's a very good goal scorer, he's technically strong, and I think he suits the hustle and bustle of the Premier League.
It was said to come from a verbal understanding reached in May, involving Chelsea, Fernandez's camp, and interested buyers. According to those reports, £120 million was the number that could make Chelsea seriously consider opening the door and allowing Fernandez to leave. Everybody involved reportedly knew the number. So the real question hanging over the deal was simple. Would Manchester City really drop £120 million before Chelsea's clock hit zero? The answer came at 5 p.m. No written bid arrived, the deadline passed, and Chelsea's position suddenly looked straightforward.
Is he compared? Now, it's a different type of player than for Enzo Fernández. I think he'll definitely score more goals. He's very good at getting goals from outside the box and arriving in the box.
Fernandez stays for the 2026-27 season, and the club moves forward, expecting him to remain part of the squad. But saying City completely slammed the door on Fernandez doesn't tell the full story. City didn't necessarily reject the player himself. Instead, they appeared unwilling to make a gigantic £120 million decision just because another club had put them on the clock. That's a major difference. Walking away from a player is one thing. Refusing to get boxed into somebody else's deadline is another. And City's approach seemed to send that message loud and clear. Then, Enzo Maresca added another twist, without even saying Fernandez's name. When asked directly whether City would complete any transfer business that day, Maresca kept it short. Not today. Reporters then pressed him specifically about Fernandez, but Maresca wasn't taking the bait. He said it wasn't his place to discuss a player contracted to another club, just as he wouldn't want rival clubs publicly talking about his own players. That response didn't kill the speculation, but it certainly gave reporters nothing extra to work with. City weren't about to show their hand. No public chase, no big promises, and no sign of panic as the deadline got closer. Maresca's response gave almost nothing away, which only made the situation more intriguing. And underneath all this transfer talk, there's reportedly some history between Chelsea and City that could make that deadline feel a little less routine. Chelsea reportedly still have some feelings about losing Maresca to City last season. There has been a belief that his conversations with City affected Chelsea's campaign before he had officially left the club. So when Chelsea reportedly slapped a strict deadline on the Fernandez deal and City simply allowed it to expire, it naturally raised eyebrows. From the outside, it could look like two Premier League giants refusing to blink in a quiet power struggle. That doesn't mean either club was definitely trying to settle an old score. There's no proof of that. But with that history sitting in the background, the Fernandez saga suddenly carries a lot more spice than your average transfer negotiation. And then you get to Rodri, arguably the biggest wildcard in this entire equation. City have already rejected 2 bids from Barcelona for him, and although there's an expectation he could eventually leave, nothing is signed or final right now. That's huge, because it completely changes how a £120 million move for Fernandez looks. If Rodri leaves and creates a major hole in City's midfield, spending huge money on another elite midfielder becomes easier to understand. But while Rodri remains officially a Manchester City player, dropping £120 million on Fernandez becomes a much harder move to sell. That might explain why City weren't rushing around trying to beat Chelsea's Friday deadline. Maybe the club was playing it smart, staying cool because they believed Chelsea needed the £120 million more than City needed Fernandez. Or maybe the non-stop transfer chatter made City's interest seem way hotter than it actually was. They could rate Fernandez highly without believing he's worth dropping that monster fee just because Chelsea started a countdown. Whatever was happening behind the scenes, one thing didn't change. The deadline arrived, 5 PM passed, and City didn't budge. But there's a reason they were even being connected with a midfielder carrying such a wild price tag, and it comes down to what's happening in City's midfield. This isn't business as usual in Manchester. Pep Guardiola is gone, Enzo Maresca is now in charge, and City aren't just replacing a couple of squad players. They're reshaping the engine room that helped drive their dominance for years. That puts serious pressure on every transfer decision, because one expensive mistake could leave Maresca with a major problem in the middle of the pitch. And the possible departure list keeps growing. Rodri's future remains unresolved, with Barcelona circling and City reportedly refusing to drop their asking price. Bernardo Silva has already walked out the door, while Tarjon Reinders looks close to a move to Saudi Arabia after barely a year in Manchester. If all three disappear in the same window, City could suddenly lose a massive chunk of their central midfield. Replacing one properly would already be difficult. Replacing 3 without throwing the balance of the squad completely off could become a serious headache. Forget replacing all 3 for a second. City have already shown they're willing to splash ridiculous money on this midfield rebuild. Elliot Anderson arrived for £116 million, a massive investment that shows exactly where the club's priorities are. This isn't City picking up a cheap backup and hoping he works out. They're treating the middle of the pitch like the main project of the summer, with Maresca needing an engine room built for his style. But Fernandez would fit into that rebuild in a very different way. He's not simply a straight Rodri replacement who drops deep, controls the tempo, and runs the game from in front of the defense. Fernandez can push higher up the pitch, get into dangerous areas, and his numbers highlight that attacking side of his game. Last season in the Premier League, he made 36 appearances, scored 10 goals, delivered 4 assists, and played more than 3,100 minutes for Chelsea. Those are strong numbers for a midfielder, but they also create a serious tactical question. Where exactly would City play him? Fernandez also ranked second in Chelsea's entire squad for touches of the ball, showing just how heavily involved he was. That tells you plenty about the player City would potentially be spending £120 million on. Fernandez doesn't just sit back, knock around safe passes, and fade into the background. He constantly wants the ball, wants to influence the action, and can still pop up with goals. That's where the attraction gets interesting. City wouldn't just be paying for another possession midfielder. They'd be buying someone who wants to get right into the heart of the game. What City would be getting is pretty clear. Goals, assists, serious involvement on the ball, and a midfielder who can keep showing up around the box when the pressure is on. But there's another major piece of this transfer puzzle. Maresca doesn't need a scouting report to understand Fernandez. He already managed him at Chelsea before moving to Manchester City, giving him first-hand knowledge of the player's strengths, habits, and ability to handle a demanding system. And the connection may run even deeper. Reports suggest Fernandez was already on City's radar before Maresca left Chelsea for the Manchester City job. So purely from a football angle, it's easy to see why this deal has been talked about. Fernandez has strong numbers. His style could fit parts of City's new look midfield. And Maresca knows exactly what kind of player he'd be bringing through the door. But that's where the £120 million question gets uncomfortable. Are those numbers really enough to justify making Fernandez the most expensive piece of City's midfield rebuild? For some supporters, the concern isn't about his passing range, his goals, or whether he can control a match. Their hesitation is connected to controversy away from football, which adds a completely different layer to a deal already carrying a massive price tag. And to understand why that issue keeps following Fernandez, you have to go back to what happened in 2024. Then came the incident that changed the conversation around Fernandez completely. In 2024, he filmed himself and several Argentina teammates on a team bus singing a chant that was widely condemned for racist and homophobic content aimed at French players. The footage spread rapidly online, bringing heavy criticism. FIFA opened disciplinary proceedings, while Chelsea announced its own internal disciplinary procedure. Fernandez later publicly apologized, saying the song included highly offensive language and that he opposed discrimination in all forms. He also said the chant didn't reflect his values. But for critics, saying sorry didn't automatically close the case. The incident happened, it became a major controversy, and changing clubs wouldn't simply make those questions disappear. If Fernandez joined Manchester City, that history could follow him straight into a dressing room made up of players from different countries and backgrounds. Teammates could reasonably want to understand what he learned from the incident before developing trust with him both on and off the pitch. For a club considering spending £120 million, that becomes another factor they may have to weigh. And for some critics, the debate goes beyond what happened in 2024. The bigger question is whether Fernandez's behavior since then demonstrates genuine growth. Some have also raised concerns about his conduct during Argentina's 2026 World Cup campaign, although any specific accusation needs to be based on verified facts rather than online speculation. That's exactly why the apology is still part of the discussion. Saying the right things matters, but people also watch what happens next. For Fernandez, any fresh controversy or questionable moment can drag that old debate right back into the spotlight, even when the circumstances are completely different. Then there's the Real Madrid saga. Fernandez's camp reportedly spent months entertaining the possibility of a move to Madrid, while hints and transfer speculation kept the story bubbling until Madrid eventually appeared to close the door. Whether every rumor reflected reality is another question. But that kind of non-stop transfer chatter can still create tension around a player. For some Chelsea supporters, it didn't look great. They felt Fernandez already had one eye on Madrid while he was still wearing Chelsea blue. Once fans start questioning a player's commitment, winning that trust back can be difficult. Even after the potential transfer went nowhere, some supporters remain skeptical about whether Fernandez was completely locked in at Chelsea. But there's another side that can't just be brushed aside. Transfer rumors don't automatically reveal what a player is thinking, and speculation around Fernandez shouldn't be treated as proven fact. Agents, clubs, journalists, and outside interests can all keep a transfer story moving without giving the full picture. And Fernandez is still only 25. He's not an aging superstar surviving on his name. He's entering what should be the prime years of his career, and after the numbers he produced last season, there's a genuine football argument that his best years could still be coming. His Chelsea spell also needs context. The club has been through major changes, different managers, inconsistent results, and massive expectations, meaning Fernandez has been trying to deliver while plenty around him has kept changing. It wouldn't be fair to pin all of Chelsea's chaos on Fernandez. Even elite players can struggle when managers change, results swing, and everything around the squad feels unstable. But none of that makes the £120 million price tag any less crazy. For that kind of money, City wouldn't just be buying talent, they'd be buying enormous expectations and a spotlight that never really switches off. Every performance would be dissected, every poor game would become a headline, and any controversy could quickly get pulled back into the conversation. Whatever side of the Fernandez debate you're on, he'd constantly be expected to prove that he was worth such a gigantic investment. At £120 million, there's basically nowhere to hide. That's why City's hesitation starts making a lot more sense. You don't throw down £120 million just because the stats look good on paper. Fernandez would arrive under pressure from day one, not only to produce goals and assists, but also to show that City were right to take on everything surrounding the transfer. Then there's the bigger squad problem. City are already throwing serious cash at rebuilding their midfield, and sinking another £120 million into one player could restrict what Maresca can spend elsewhere. One blockbuster signing can look cold when everything clicks, but if the tactical fit isn't quite right, that monster price tag can turn into a headache very quickly. And City know they still have some leverage. Chelsea reportedly set the deadline, City watched it pass, and nothing happened. That doesn't automatically mean the interest is finished. It could simply mean City aren't interested in doing the deal on Chelsea's terms. If Chelsea ever soften their stance, this whole situation could flip fast. But at £120 million, City clearly weren't willing to blink first. And that's where Chelsea's side of the deal gets complicated. They can publicly stick to that monster valuation, but keeping Fernandez also means dealing with a player whose name has been caught up in transfer speculation for months. If City return later with a lower offer, Chelsea could face a serious decision. Do they hold firm and refuse to move, or take a huge amount of money and start planning without Fernandez? City, meanwhile, don't need to move like they're desperate. Maresca already has a major midfield rebuild to handle, and the club can check out other options while the Fernandez saga keeps simmering in the background. That could put even more pressure on Chelsea's £120 million valuation. If nobody else comes close to paying that number, City's position at the negotiating table could become much stronger. But playing the waiting game comes with its own risk. Another club could suddenly step in, or Chelsea could shut everything down and decide Fernandez simply isn't leaving. So far, City may like the player, but they seem to value having control over the deal even more. And that's what makes this such an interesting test for Maresca. He knows Fernandez better than most managers City could have brought in. He's watched him train, seen how he reacts when the pressure gets heavy, and knows firsthand what the midfielder can offer when a system is designed to bring out his strongest qualities. If anyone inside Manchester City should know whether Fernandez is worth such a massive gamble, it's Maresca. He's worked with him up close and knows what the midfielder can offer. But that familiarity cuts both ways. Maybe it's exactly why City showed interest in the first place. Or maybe Maresca knows enough to believe £120 million is simply too steep when City have several midfield holes to fix at the same time. That's what makes City's quiet approach so telling. They haven't needed to publicly knock Fernandez or slam the door on a future move. They've simply refused to meet Chelsea's reported terms. If Maresca really wants that reunion, City can sit tight, watch how the market develops, and potentially return later without letting Chelsea control the price, timing, and entire negotiation. And once again, everything circles back to Rodri. If he eventually leaves for Barcelona, the Fernandez links suddenly make far more sense. City would have a huge midfield gap and a stronger reason to consider another blockbuster investment. But if Rodri stays in Manchester, dropping £120 million on Fernandez becomes much harder to justify. City also aren't stuck with one option. Buati is already advancing from Lille, while Anderson is already through the door. That gives Maresca alternatives, and, more importantly, gives City the freedom to walk away instead of getting boxed into a deal they don't love. That's why the real debate among City supporters was never simply about Fernandez's talent. Most people can see what he offers on the pitch. The bigger argument is whether everything that comes with him, combined with that enormous £120 million valuation, makes him the right gamble for this particular rebuild. And that's what this entire saga really comes down to. The question was never simply whether Fernandez is talented enough for Manchester City. It's whether this player, at this massive £120 million price, with all the pressure and everything surrounding the deal, is genuinely worth the gamble. For now, Fernandez remains a Chelsea player, And City's decision to watch that deadline pass without making the reported offer could tell us more about their true level of interest than months of transfer rumors ever did. Maybe City believe they dodged an overpriced deal, or maybe they're simply waiting for the perfect moment to come back with an offer on their own terms. But what do you think? Did Manchester City make the right call by refusing to pay £120 million, or should they have gone all in and brought Fernandez to the Etihad? Drop your opinion in the comments and get involved in the debate. If you enjoyed the video, like it, share it with another football fan, and subscribe to Matchio for more transfer drama, breaking football stories, and the biggest talking points from across the game. Turn on notifications as well so you don't miss what's coming next.